Greetings again from the Oral History Microphone. I'm Ray Mofield, and we're visiting in Benton once more. Today, we're in the home of Mrs. Irvin, that's Mary Walker, Norwood, at 1411 Main Street. It's a beautiful day, and we're certainly glad to be here. Thank you very much, Ms. Norwood, for letting me come.
Thank you for coming.
We're always interested in getting the names of people and their relatives and their interesting experiences, especially of our older citizens. Now, you, I believe, were born in Marshall County?
That's right.
And you were sort of from the Olive neighborhood?
Olive community.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, actually, of course, I know some of your folks. I don't know all the details. Who was your father?
Clyde Walker.
Clyde Walker.
Mm-hmm.
And your mother was
Verna Philbeck.
A Philbeck.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the Walkers and the Philbecks.
A cousin to Fred Philbeck.
Oh, of the funeral home.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I remember Mr. Fred quite well, and his widow, who operated the place for a number of years following his untimely death.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, do you remember any of the grandparents on either side?
Oh, yeah. I've got a good memory of them collection.
Fine. Well, you tell us something about them.
My mother was Verna Philbeck, and her mother was Nancy Catherine Kinsey. That was my grandmother on the Kinsey side. And her daddy was Joe Kinsey. That is my great-granddad. And then on the no, that's I got it wrong. Yeah. And then on the Gaheen side was James Gaheen. That was my great-granddad. And Elizabeth Utley Gaheen was a great-grandmother. And the James Gaheen that will be my great-great-granddad. And he raised my grandmother. That her parents died when she was young, and her grandparents had to raise her, and they homesteaded a tract of land over there in the Olive community. And
well, that really goes back when you're homesteading.
And that was where my grandparents lived, and then later in years my daddy and mother had to go to live with them, and they bought the land and lived there, and I have the original deed of this great-great-grandfather's homesteading.
What a treasure.
And it was in November the 15th, 1831, when it was. Before he got this tract of land, I don't know how much it was. It don't tell just for certain corner to certain corner for $40.
Well, land prices were a bit cheaper then than they are today.
Yeah, and at that time that James Metcalf was the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky at that time when that deed was.
Now that does take us back, and Metcalf County, of course, was named for Governor Metcalf.
And then on my grandfather Philbeck was John Wesley, and that was my granddaddy, and William J. Philbeck was my great-granddad, and Sarah Gaheen was my great-grandmother on the Philbeck side.
When I think of Gaheens, I always think of athletes for some reason.
Well, then my daddy, on my daddy's side, my daddy, as I told you, is Clyde Walker, and his daddy was John Virgil Walker. That was my that was granddad, and my grandmother on the Walker side was Alice Dunn, and my great-granddad was John Henry Walker, and my great-grandmother on the Walker side was Serena Walker, and on the Dunn side was Alfred Dunn, great-granddad, and Cerilla Dunn, my great-grandmother.
You've done a better job than anybody that I've interviewed in a good while. Well, that's wonderful. You have it down to where you can look through those and enjoy looking. Do you have any photographs of any of those people? I suppose you have a few.
Well, I have some of the grandparents, just the grandparents, yeah.
Well, that is fine. Now, you were born at about what time?
It is September 18th, 1910.
So you went to a one-room country
No,
school, probably.
Olive was, at the time I went, was two-room school.
Oh, a big city school.
Yeah, but later on it got to be a one-room, but at the time I went it was two-room. Had the little room and the big room.
I can recall that. Well, I'm not positive of this. I know Gus Harrison was a teacher. Did he
Yeah.
ever teach at Olive?
Oh yeah, one of my teachers.
Uh-huh.
But my first teacher was Bonnie Ratliff. Bonnie Ratliff.
Van Ratliff's
Bonnie Ratliff's sister. And then Flora Hartley, and Zero Grubbs, and Walter Bloomingberg. And they always said I was his
That's
teacher.
kin to that's my wife's uncle.
Yeah, Gus Harrison. And then when we got ready to take the diploma examination, I reckon our school didn't last as long as Hardin did, and they suggested the 8th graders go to Hardin for 1 month to get ready, prepared for the diploma. So I went to Hardin for 1 month, and Miss Waterfield was my teacher there. Harry Lee, Waterfield's mother, and I went with him for a month to school.
Oh, and he became lieutenant governor
Yeah.
twice.
Yeah.
And a millionaire insurance man, and
And I saw him over at the reunion the other year, and he knew me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Fine.
And then in high school, then I graduated and went to Hardin High School and graduated in 1929. Teachers over there was Homer Lester, and Mr. Lewis, Junius Lewis, and Miss Hatcher, and Homer Lester, I said that, and Miss Hicks, I believe.
Yes.
And I rode a horse to school all the time. We didn't have buses back then. When I went to grade school, I walked through the muddy roads, and then went to high school, I rode a horse. And we didn't have the highway then, and the river got out a lot, you know. And my parents would tell me when I went to go on, if the river's very high, not to cross it. But I crossed it, I never did turn back.
Yeah.
And get over there, and I'd stay with my Uncle and Aunt Clyde and Pearl Youngblood. Then you didn't have to change clothes every day. It didn't matter where you had to change clothes or not. You just go ahead and stay a few days.
Stay all right. Yeah. You know, I remember Clyde and Pearl. Clyde was a great mechanic. Ran a garage there when I knew him.
That's right.
And, of course, I recall Joe Taylor Youngblood, a little older than I, but he went to Murray. And, of course, one of the tales I tell, I always like to brag on Hardin High, was that the greatest photographer that ever went to Murray State was Joe Taylor Youngblood.
And he was here to see me Saturday.
He was?
Yeah, he
I understand that he retired
from the bank.
Uh-huh.
He first retired from
the Air Force?
Air Force, and then he went into the banking business, and he retired last November.
So he's now retired twice.
Tomorrow he'll be 65 years old. And him and his wife was here looking fine.
Well, now, his younger brother was about 2 years behind me in school, but we were on the Hardin High debate team together. And the year Hardin won the regional, 1940, Winston Starks and I suppose we were the varsity. But we had, Phil Youngblood was one of the reserve debaters and went to the state tournament with us. I believe he went to Georgia Tech, became a great engineer, but unfortunately died rather young.
He drowned. He was a scuba diving and drowned.
Uh-huh.
Or something happened, and he died. They didn't think, they said he was so good as they'd been at so long, didn't believe it was an accident, thought something happened to him. But anyway, his wife was with him and seen him go down. She tried to save him, and she seen she was going to drown too, and so she got out and got him, and they got him out.
Yeah.
And buried in Huntsville, Alabama.
Well, I hated to hear that, of course.
He was a very favorite cousin.
All right, so you were graduated then in the class of 1929 at Hardin.
Yeah.
When that class finished in May of that year, I suppose it seemed we were in a great period of prosperity. But by the fall,
Wasn't very prosperous.
the Depression started.
Well, I graduated in May and married in June.
Tell us a little bit about the man you married.
I married Irving Norwood. He was Jack Norwood's boy, and he was kin to you, for your grandmother used to come over there to my in-laws and stay some days. It was Aunt Jane Mofield. I never did know where really I aunt or not, but anyway, that's what we called her. Aunt
You know,
Jane.
a lot of the older people back then, they called them aunt or uncle, I guess sort of a courtesy title. But I knew I was kin to quite a number of the Norwoods, and I don't know that I can trace all of it and know exactly how it fits in the puzzle. But Nancy Louise Norwood was her name. Now, I'm not certain who her father was, but she married Robert Redden Mofield, and of course has been dead and a good long while. Now, I remember that she died, I think it was 1939, and she's buried at the Barnett Cemetery.
Yeah.
You've been there many
Oh,
times.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm kin to a lot of Norwoods.
Yeah. Yeah, I married Irving Norwood in 29, and we lived with his parents for a few months and built a little two-room house over there on their property, and it was very, very crude. We could see the chickens walking under the house in wintertime.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. We lived in rental houses just, well, Dad was a sharecropper, and we moved a lot of different times. I think right in that neighborhood, and I was born near there.
Yeah.
And it was, and I'm a little mixed up. I can't remember my parents, whether I was born on Jim Will Barnett's place or Lee Gay.
Yeah, that's close together.
But I think they lived 1 year at one and maybe 1 year at another.
So we lived this place through the winter, and then we moved to another place to make a crop, to Johnny Watkins' place.
Uh-huh.
And there we lived through the hot, dry years. It's 30 and 31 to 31, 32, I don't know which it was. But anyway, it was a hot, dry time, I know. We lived there.
I remember 1930. Now, if you think it's been dry this year.
Yeah, it was dry then. Yeah.
It was dry.
Yeah, my daddy had cows, you know, and he'd go to the river and haul water, and then he'd go down there and cut river weeds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me tell you something about my daddy. He was a farmer, but he had other things too. He run a hay bale in summertime, baled this round bales of hay, and that way you had to have several folks working for you. You had to have somebody to pitch it and somebody to put the wire in and somebody to tie it and all this stuff. And then he bought cattle. He bought cattle and drove them carried a horse with him, but they walked and drove them to Paducah to Jones's slaughterhouse. And he'd come home with a great big roll of bologna after night. Of course, we didn't have any refrigeration. Us kids would get up and I guess eat it all for bedtime, before we went back to bed, rather.
But wasn't that a
Oh,
treat?
it was the best stuff. So about the only time you ever got any bologna.
Uh-huh.
It was really good. I haven't seen any that good lately. That was fine. But my daddy had a hard time. But anyway, he done a lot of different things to raise us kids. They had there's just two of us left now. My sister Brooks, but we got two, and John Ed Walker. But we've got two sisters dead.
Mm-hmm.
One died as a little girl with whooping cough, and then Mildred, that married Lawrence Lamb, died with cancer 11 years ago. So we lived over there on that farm, me and Irving did, for a long, long time. And
What was that, your
Olive.
dad's old place?
No. We lived over there by his folks.
By his folks, yes.
We lived over there till 11 years ago, and he is in bad health. He had diabetes, and he had to retire from worked at the Carbide, and he decided one day we should move to Benton. Well, I thought he was going crazy, for he never had wanted to move to live in town. But anyway, he kept on about it, and I told him
Don't you imagine that he had a kind of a premonition that he might die,
yeah.
and he wanted
Yeah.
you to be where you
And so
could more easily take care
I
of
told him
yourself?
if he'd buy a place that I liked, I'd move with him, and we bought here, and we moved here in August 11 years ago, and he lived a year and a month, and died on the housetop repairing the roof.
Well,
And he had
that's a dramatic story.
He had some little things down. He wanted to cut some bushes around, different things down. He wanted to fix that roof. It was flat, and he wanted to build it up so it wouldn't leak. And he was up there that morning and never had nailed a nail. And I'd went out to see about him, and everything he said is going great. And come in the house and set the dinner table. My son is working in town, and he was coming for lunch and went back out, and I couldn't see him. And I thought I didn't know why I couldn't think of seeing him in my yard and run across the street over Harry Henson's. He was a little taller. And I seen him laying there, and I hollered for Harry, and Harry come, and he was dead. He told me just a few minutes before that everything is great. So he died of a heart attack.
Oh, it came suddenly.
But he had always
he didn't
said
suffer very
no.
long.
And he had his pills in his pocket, but I'm sure he didn't take them. And he was laying with his head up the hill, for he didn't fall. For if he had, he fell off and broke his bones. But he always said, "Don't grieve over anybody dying of heart attack." So I see it could have been worse.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then we had 2 children. We had Wendell. We had been married about 5 years before we had any children. Had Wendell, and then in 17 months had another, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And Wendell is electrician, works the DC Electric.
Where does he live?
3rd Olive, just down, you know where the Jack Stone place was?
Oh, yes.
He built-
That is Helen Stone's father.
Well, he
wasn't it?
built a house just down
Helen
kind
Gardner now.
down the foot of the hill, up kind of on a hill. Real pretty place, has a pretty place. And
That is beautiful through there.
And he has 4 children. And then Joe is the other one. And
Isn't it great? Now you get to see your grandchildren.
Yeah, I've got 6 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren.
Uh-huh.
And then Joe lives in Arizona, and he's...
Now that is a long way from here.
Yeah,
So
that
you don't
is.
get to go there very
I
often.
go once a year.
Once it, yeah.
And he lives there, and he's a real estate appraiser. And he has 2 children, and they both live there, close to him.
Mm-hmm.
Both have jobs and live there.
So when you go there, you can see not only your son and his wife, but the grandchildren
Yeah, and then
too.
I come back by Dallas, Texas, and visit Brooks.
But now, who is this Brooks you're talking
My
about?
sister, my youngest sister.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, my youngest sister. See, I've just got my brother, John Ed, that retired the first.
Uh-huh.
That's my brother. And then Brooks is my baby sister. She's the baby, and I was the oldest in the family.
So you had the
There was 2 dead.
extremes
Mhm.
there. Now, Brooks went to Hardin High when I did,
Yeah,
and of course she was younger, and I think may have been in the class of 42.
yeah.
I know I was in the
I don't
class of
remember.
40.
Yeah,
And we've enjoyed having her. I recalled that she married a Turner and lives in
yeah,
Dallas.
yeah.
So you come by there
Yeah,
and
I
make a
come
real
there,
trip
yeah,
out of
yeah.
it.
And both my boys graduated from Hardin High School.
Mhm.
And my, Joe went to Murray and graduated from Murray.
Mhm.
And Wendell never did. As soon as Wendell got out of high school, John had come over and asked him if he'd like to be an electrician. And so he started in going as apprentice, going to Paducah.
Well, they learned a good trade.
So he's worked there ever since he got out of high school, and he's 52, I guess, now. And then his son, he's followed in his footsteps, and he's an electrician.
Mhm.
And then he's got a little boy that just turned 13, and a girl that'll soon be 19 at home.
I imagine a good many of our people who are listening will know Brooks.
Yeah,
And does she have any children?
one. He's Mark.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
You know, it was a little confusing to those of us on the inside about the Brooks Walkers. Now,
Yeah.
your brother married Brooks Harrison,
Yeah, and
which made her Brooks Walker.
yeah. See, she's Brooks, and I'm Mary, and then my sister's Brooks. So they tell him yesterday he had to marry Brooks all around,
Yeah.
marrying a Brooks and a Mary Brooks. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Mary Brooks Harrison also went to Hardin High
Yeah,
School.
Yeah.
I might say that. now.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back. Did you meet your husband in the school there? Or?
Oh, I knew him all my life. He teased
Uh-huh.
me when I was going to Olive, and I thought he was about the meanest kid that ever lived. He teased me, and I didn't like him at all. But I learned to love him after so long a time, and he was a wonderful man.
Did he ever pull your hair?
No, he didn't do
things like
that, but he teased me, and I thought he was kind of...
Uh-huh.
I reckon he always said he didn't tease anybody he didn't like, and I reckon that's the reason he teased me.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now, did he always farm?
Well, yeah, he didn't like... Well, no, he didn't always farm. He went to Detroit and worked for a little while before we married, but he didn't like Detroit at all. And he made me promise before we married I wouldn't ask him to go to Detroit. So we didn't go to Detroit. When everybody else went and made money, we stayed at home and almost on starvation.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, then after he got 40 years old, he got a job at a carbide plant. He knew then he had to if you ever aimed to work public work, you had to get a job. So he worked down there 17 years and then had to retire on account of his health.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you did, I suppose, ultimately just as well by staying here
Yeah,
as you would
I guess so.
had you gone away.
And I never worked at public work much. I bought cream at Olive. You know how folks sold cream and tested cream.
Yeah.
I
Did you run the tester?
Oh yeah, sure. I went to Mayfield and learned how to test cream, and I tested cream. And of course, I worked there in Ray Harrison's store, and I'd sell groceries along with the testing cream for a few years. And then I got a job at a cigar factory, and I worked 15 months at a cigar factory.
Now that was here in Benton, wasn't
Yeah, in Benton.
it? Right.
And I said to maid, I worked 15 months, and the kids was in the teenagers, and they kind of wanted me to be at home, I think, and I guess I wanted to too. So I quit, but I said that $1,500, we bought more with it than we could now with $15,000.
Why,
We bought a
yes,
A-model car, and the first refrigerator I ever had, bought it, and bought a coal oil stove, and my husband built all kinds of fences. He wasn't working that time. He worked at the blacksmith shop that time, and he wasn't making much money, but we sure spent my money good. And then along after that, his niece died and left a little girl that was 2 years old, and we 3 years old. Her mother died first, and then her grandmother took the child, and she kept her for a year, and then she died sudden. And then the man asked me, they was in Michigan, asked me if I'd take her, so I took her and kept her. We took her and kept her 3 years.
What do you think changed your life more than anything else in this? You said now you took that $1,500.
Yeah.
My mother always said the greatest change in life was from the refrigerator.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
I know your brother was involved with the Rural Electric Administration. And,
Yeah.
to me, that was always the queen of the government agencies.
Mhm.
Because it allowed country life
Yeah.
to change more than anything that I ever knew.
Yeah, we never even had an ice box. And all the ice we ever got is go on Saturday evening over to Hardin and get a little piece of ice and wrap it up in a sack or something. And
Yeah, we'd go by Mr. Crosby's when I
Yeah.
was a boy, and what was his name? Was John Crosby?
John.
Sold ice, and of course a quarter's worth was
Oh, yeah.
was a pretty good slab
Yeah.
of ice.
I heard a boy the other day says at the filling station, he was saying he didn't have folks studied when they used to, and they didn't have electricity and fans and air conditioning. I said, well, we didn't know much difference, and we didn't get any hotter than we did now, and I thought air conditioners would run us. Now you can't stand it. I said, we didn't have any electricity till for a long, long time. We bought it as soon as it come through our way, but I don't even remember what year it was.
Well, I think just about everybody subscribed as soon as they could, but of course they couldn't build all the lines at the same time.
No.
So it varied. The first few lines in this area were slightly before World War II, but for most of us it came after World War II was
yeah,
over.
Yeah, yeah.
I know it did at our place
Yeah.
a good little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your brother retired, and you got to go to
Yeah.
the ceremony.
There's lots there, and had a good meeting. It was nice. Kind of sad, I guess, for him in a way, and I guess he was looking forward to it too. But he's been in a long time. He won't know what to do, I'm afraid.
Well, like everybody who faces retirement, he'll, of course, need to find some other things to keep him busy. He's been a very busy man all of his life.
Yeah.
Devoted himself
Had to
faithfully.
Had to do a lot of traveling and had lots of heartaches, I imagine, with the job, and a lot of pleasures. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about the town of Olive when you were smaller. Has it ever been much different to what it is
Oh,
today?
yeah. We used to have 3 groceries up there. and now we've just got one.
Uh-huh.
And at one time, back when my mother was a little girl, they had a post office up there and a place where they sold caskets.
Oh, I'm not sure I realized there was a post office
Yeah,
in Olive.
well, Melissa Hartley, you know who that was.
Yes.
Flora's
Uh-huh.
mother. They's the one that had the post office,
Uh-huh.
and that was Irvin's aunt.
Mm-hmm.
But that was back before my time, of course.
I know she was kin to me a little bit some way. Well, it's through the Norwoods, I
Yeah.
imagine, because
Yeah.
my dad was related to them, and he was kin to Homer Hartley, which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
her son, and
Yeah.
Flora's brother. I remember Will Norwood, and there was a Henry Norwood,
Yeah,
and
John Henry.
Edgar.
Edgar.
I don't know whether Henry Norwood was John Henry's son or
It
not.
was, yeah.
But,
There's Vane and Henry and Edgar and well, Connie. Connie was for oldest.
Yeah.
Oldest. All of them dead but Edgar.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another interesting part of it. Now, we'll only have about a minute or so left. Do you have any special stories you'd like to tell? Anything
No.
that was real funny to you? Or
I guess not. Nothing that.
your most embarrassing moment?
I
Did
guess nothing I can tell over
you- on the radio, huh?
Yeah. Oh, I liked school, and I wasn't too good, but I was a pretty good student. When we graduated from high school, there wasn't but 5 in class, and I was a salutatorian. My husband is valedictorian. But we wasn't all that smart, just wasn't many of us. I made pretty good grades.
Well, I think although the theory is that you'd be a lot better if you were in a lot larger class, nevertheless, some of those small school students turned out quite well, and they did as well as anybody else,
I guess so.
even in larger
I guess so.
circuses. Did you like spelling, maybe?
Oh, I don't know as I like spelling too well. I was telling my sister this morning I didn't what I like best. I liked geometry pretty well, but I never did see any sense to it. But I learned it at that time, made good grades, but I never did get much use for it.
Well, we certainly thank you for inviting us over, letting us come by to talk. And this is Ray Mofield, and we've been visiting with our oral history microphone at 1411 Main Street in Benton. We've been interviewing Mrs. Irvin Norwood, and as she has told you, she was Mary Walker. We invite you to suggest others to be interviewed in this series, continuing on WCBL. We return you now to our studio.